two mistakes going to watch this movie. First, I invited my partner's younger sibling. And two, I thought this was going to be some hardcore fantasy feminist movie. Hi, I'm Emily or La Movie Mija. I'm a queer Latina filmmaker, and here's my spoiler-free review of Poor Things. Poor Things is an adaptation from a novel of the same name, and it tells the story of Bella Baxter, a woman who has died and is reanimated by Dr. Godwin Baxter. Instead of being brought back to life with her own brain, Dr. Godwin Baxter brings her back to life with the brain of an infant. Bella matures, she develops this insatiable curiosity about her own body and the world around her. So she sets off in this erotic, fantastical adventure to discover more about herself and the world. Visually, this movie is jaw-droppingly beautiful, from the set design, costume design, the art direction. A mix of fantasy, Victorian, steampunk aesthetics is just out of this world and needs to be experienced in theaters. The entire cast is incredible. Emma Stone gives the performance of a lifetime because she is charged with portraying Bella Baxter at all these different levels of maturity. And the way that she commits to the physicality of her character and gives her these really interesting quirks is astonishing. Willem Dafoe just never disappoints for me. Rami Youssef is also so charming and endearing. Mark Ruffalo as a slimy womanizer, it was perfection. Sometimes when I'm watching a movie, there'll be a person in the cast where they feel like they don't belong to the film. But this movie has a cast that delivers all together. Like, it's really incredible how cohesive all of their performances are. I want to briefly share a little bit about the themes of this film because that gets to that second mistake I had going into this movie. Two of the major themes for this film are autonomy and control. We see autonomy being explored in her reanimation, like she couldn't consent to being brought back to life after she died, and control with all the men around her trying to control her under the guise of protecting her from the outside world because, again, she is a grown woman with an infant's brain. Bella was raised by scientists, so it makes sense that she becomes somewhat of a scientist herself. It's really interesting to see the ways in which she applies logic and reason to her own pursuits of pleasure and happiness. Her lust for things in the outside world develops with her, so it's very physical at first with the food she eats, the sex she has, and she has lots of sex. Lots of sex. Things outside of her own body, like systems and society and even medicine. For me, this film is at its best when it is tackling that patriarchal notion that women are the irrational sex. Because as a person who is very surgically applying scientific data to her logic and reasoning and her pursuit of pleasure and happiness, it can very easily cut through all these really irrational reasons that men are giving her to avoid certain things. Similar to Margot Robbie's Barbie, Bella Baxter doesn't have an inner dialogue or a self-critic that is making her second-guess her wants and needs. She is only applying logic and reason and pursuing what she wants without the pressures of pleasing an outside society or holding herself up to the standards that men have of her. But because there is just so much sex in this movie and they put so much importance on showing us that sex, I found myself asking if the men who made this movie actually believe that sex plays a pivotal role in the liberation of women, or if this is just another way that men sexualize feminism. Once I let go of the idea that this movie was going to be some critical piece of feminist media, then I started to have a good time. Because if you go in with the idea that it's going to teach you something new about feminism and women and the way of the world, you're going to be disappointed. But if you step into this fantastical, beautifully crafted world that is the singular experience of a Bella Baxter and not an amalgamation of all of women's experiences, then watching this movie is such a singular, special experience. I definitely recommend you see it for yourself. I think it's interesting that even I get caught up in putting that kind of pressure on a film, like the way people thought Barbie was going to solve all of our problems and change the world's idea of feminism. Let me know if you check out Poor Things and find me at Movie Mija on all the things and Letterboxd. And remember, don't make the same mistakes I did.